Labor may be thinking about what it will take to get the party over the line in the lead up to the next election. And Duncan Garner wonders whether a wiping of student loan debt could be on the cards. Duncan, why do you think this?
Well, I mean, I'm just floating it because Labor have been known in the past to do big bribes. You've seen the student loan interest fees come off. You've seen the student fees come off for the first year. So Grant Robertson's a player in this area. It's how they've won elections in the past. And I would have thought that if you're going to win this next election, they're going to need some gigantic bribe. They'll need a monstrous bribe, in my view, to stay in the game, because I think the electorate's switched off them to some extent. So you don't have to wipe all the loans. $16 billion is the value of the loans. Now, you don't have to wipe it all. I mean, Biden hasn't wiped it all in America. He's put in $300 billion, which is massive. But it's a $1 trillion loan book, you see. So they could do $8 billion over a number of years, giving everyone a lump sum. I mean, you think about it, it affects grandparents who worry about their grandkids' loans. It affects parents who worry about their kids' loans. It affects the students who vote themselves because their loans in their name. So don't discount it as... I mean, I know they're eye-watering numbers, but everything's eye-watering in COVID, so anything goes now.
What about people who have just paid off their loans? Won't that really turn them off them?
It's an inequity, but what if you've just paid off your loan but your sister hasn't, or your brother hasn't, or your two brothers haven't, or your three brothers haven't? So there'll be inequities across generations, but there always is in public policy. I mean, you just look at any public policy, there's always inequities. You try to reduce that, of course, with fair law, but there's still 1.43 million people with loans, and that's a huge constituency that you could target in one swoop. And a very simple policy that would be simple to understand. I'm not saying they'll do it, but they need to come up with a bribe, because they always do and always will. So what's this one going to be? Student allowances, free fees for 3 years, or this?
You might have given them some ideas, don't you?
Maybe, I don't know. But is it too big to be credible, though? That's the other thing. Is it too much? Well, if you're going for the third term and you are unpopular, you need some votes.
Now, you also point to there having been a really high spend across sectors in New Zealand, but not much to show for it, especially in health and education.
Doesn't appear so, does it? I mean, if you look at it, $128 billion. Of course, COVID, obviously it was a big spend, but it's the biggest spend ever that we've spent. And all I see, wherever you go and hear and look at, is shortages of either nurses or teachers or firefighters. There's even as we do this interview, the hospital in the far north in the Hokianga no longer has an after-hours service or an out clinic there, because they can't get the doctor and can't get the nurse, so they've closed it down. Everywhere you look, record spend, no service. Why? Where's the money gone? I think it's gone to restructuring. I think this government's created fiefdoms and big corporate bureaucracies, but are we getting better? Are we getting more services, better services, more operations? Are we or are we not? I don't think we are. I think we're getting managers, photocopiers, officers, and nothing for service delivery at the bottom. I think it's quite clear.
How much of this could be a historic underspending, and we might see results from this down the track?
Well, the thing with this is that it's a new in health. It's a new structure set up completely now. Whether where's the payoff for that? Maybe 10 years down the track, we might see it pay off. We might see it work for some sectors of society. Historic underspend, years of historic underspend, especially in health, and both governments are to blame for this, and I've written this before in the MBR, that we have probably for 30 years underfunded hospitals on a population basis. 30 years we've done this. So they can look at each other and blame each other, but they're both to blame because we never funded for population increase. We funded, but not for population increase. So I think it's almost negligence in many ways.
You also touch on workers really needing to be enticed to New Zealand. Borders are open now, but people aren't coming in. And
I'm linking that to the workers that we can't find. So if you look overseas, why aren't they coming? I mean, the nurses, if you look at the latest information, I think 24 nurses have been accepted into the country since the borders opened. 24, that's fewer than when the actual borders were closed. Why are they not coming here? Why is New Zealand unattractive? It's pay rates. We can't compete with Australia. Where would you go? Would you go for $90,000 in Australia or $70,000 in New Zealand? It's a no-brainer. So, and the government's made some moves lately, but I think they're quite belated moves. Why weren't they at the forefront of this? Why didn't they see this? They've got advisors. I think it was pretty obvious months ago that we were struggling to get people in there.
Now, you also say that it feels like a recession in New Zealand now.
It's just if you look at the housing market, and that's always a reasonable indicator of where people's confidence is at. So it's fallen through the roof, it's fallen through the floor, and the roof, and everything else. I think I'm not sure. I wonder if we are. I think America's heading towards it, but it doesn't necessarily mean we are. I know that they catch a cold, we catch a flu, or they catch a flu, we catch a cold. I know there's always that theory, but I think if you look at all the underlying figures, all the underlying information that's out there, we look like we're in a recession. But I wonder if employment is keeping it buoyant enough, and company results is keeping it buoyant enough to stay out of it, but maybe come later. But I don't think the housing market's finished yet. You look at all the data that's around, and some of the talk amongst the experts is that we won't reach the bottom till middle of next year. So that's a pretty mighty fall if we've already gone 10 or 15%. So I feel like it's recessionary, but we might escape it this time. But I think it's going to catch us at some stage. Yeah.
Duncan, thank you very much for coming in.
You're welcome. No problems.